can undertake a new review after so long. So we hope to see some results on that, and hopefully we'll be able to update you on that as well. But the Africa Peer Review has been very, very active, as it always is. There's a lot of things that are always going on. So today I'm going to give you an update on things that have been happening around on their Twitter feed, which is always very reflective of the developments that is happening. So, of course, Africa Day was very, very recent. And so there's a lot of things around the Africa Day theme. We can tell you that the Africa Peer Review mechanism had held a symposium online. They also hold a symposium in South Africa as well to help sensitize the students in southern South Africa universities as well on what the APRM is. I think they've done a very good job of engaging academia around these issues, and it's not very surprising because the boss himself is an academic, so I think it's a joy for him to be able to reach out to universities and get them to understand the role of the APRM and how it's facilitating peace and security, democratic governance on the continent as well. So let's just read a few of the Twitter feeds. So a few days ago, 3 days ago, they actually had the Secretary General of AFTA, Wamkele Mene, who joined a webinar on the youth participation towards building a strong AFTA. And they actually had other people like the Vice Chancellor, University of Cape Town, APRM panel chairperson, and then one lady, an African economist who's the managing director of an advisory firm and has served as Minister of Investment in the government, all discussing youth development and participation on the African continent amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, and it was with a view to looking at different areas which fit into the theme of Africa Day. COVID is with us. We need to look at the different areas which can make our lives easier. And one of the other tweets was about, still on the theme, the symposium, the Africa Day Symposium. And it says, while we are conscious about challenges faced by youth, we shall take advantage of Africa's trend, also shaped by the rise of technology and the AFTA, over and above health and conflicts. That was one of the quotations by one Ambassador Sefwe, who made it at the symposium on Africa Day. There was also some other comments on peace and security in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. It looks like people are now beginning to think through peace and security and link it with COVID-19. I think there's a lot of discussion now about health security, because if we want to strengthen our health systems, it isn't just a matter of health anymore. It's about securing the health, the infrastructure, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more concern about that as well. So that was with the youth session, the youth participation, where they brought some people from the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat to speak at the public symposium. But other things that APRM has been doing is really just celebrating the Africa Day and sharing a lot of Africa memes and stuff with the rest of the world. But definitely, Africa Day has really dominated the APRM. But what we will be doing for you is that we'll try and find out if there are any updates in the next edition of APRM Watch on what transpired at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs almost 2 weeks ago when the APRM was in Accra. And we'll definitely give you an update on that. But in the meantime, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with another exciting edition of Ear on East Africa. So stay with us. So we'll be right back with the break. So welcome back from the break, and I'm very happy to be presenting to you an exciting edition of Ear on East Africa. In fact, for the past couple of days, there's been a lot of developments around in East Africa, and I think the biggest of them has been the one on Lamu Port. Now, the hashtag Lamu Port Roars was trending 6 days ago on the Kenyan Twitter sphere because Kenya had finally launching its Lamu Port, which is part of what they call the LAPSET project, which is Lamu in Kenya, then Ethiopia, and then South Sudan. LAPSET brings together these three countries of Kenya, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. And the whole idea of the LAPSET is it's a whole trade infrastructure corridor that will link up East Africa all the way to West Africa in Dakar. That's ultimately what they want to do. Now, the opening of the Lamu port suggests that after many years of building and discussions and so on and so forth, Kenya is really finally committed to the project, and therefore it's going to be doing a lot more. So there was a lot of stuff on Kenya television news online. The Uhuru Kenyatta, the president, also opened it. And Lamu is actually a county, one of the counties in Kenya. And so we understand that it's a county that doesn't have so many people. It's underpopulated, and one of the key things is fishing. And it's really a coastal area. So what the Lamu port opening will do is that it'll also open it up for investment. It'll open up the blue economy. Now, for those who don't know what the blue economy really is the economy of the oceans, of rivers, of seas, which is very lucrative for those who are into it. There are many countries that do the blue economy a lot better. I can tell you Ghana definitely is not one of them, and that's a personal opinion. Countries like Seychelles, Kenya, a lot of East African countries, because of the Indian Ocean and all this, they pay attention to the blue economy. In Ghana, which is close to the Gulf of Guinea, Nigeria is also close to the Gulf of Guinea. We are near the ocean, but somehow we have not made that particular commitment to the blue economy. So for them in East Africa, Lamu Port opening, and the Lamu Port Roars, interestingly, is the hashtag that they used, it's going to be great developments in Kenya and a lot of East Africa as well. For some of us, also we see that the fact that it's connecting Ethiopia with South Sudan is very good. South Sudan has been a country that has had a lot of problems and a lot of issues, conflict and so on. So this thing will help steer their minds that economic development, economic integration is also important. And also for Ethiopia, which has been going through conflict, this is also a good opportunity to start thinking about how they can integrate East Africa in a very concerted way. Just want to read some of the quotations that came from the Lamu, and even to this day, 6 days later, people are still, tweeting about the Lamu port. So basically, one of the tweets says that operationalization of the first berth of the new Lamu port, hashtag Lamu port roars, hashtag Lamu port takeoff. Another one says that this is a great project under Vision 2030 that will transform our nation, that is the nation of Kenya, into an industrial and high-income country. Congratulations, Mr. President. Hashtag Lamu Port Roars. One tweeter was saying, when complete, that 310 billion shilling port will have 32 berths, 29 of which will be financed by the private sector, making it the largest deep water port in sub-Saharan Africa. And there are some very other interesting tweets, including one from Sir Mark Makuda that says, Kenya has opened the Chinese-built $3 billion Lamu port. It will serve East and Central Africa. It has 32 berths, and of those, 3 have been completed. It's expected to be the biggest port in Africa once fully constructed. Hashtag Lamu Port roars. Another one by Construction Kenya account says, the opening of Lamu Port is a major achievement for a government that has been struggling to complete and operationalize a long-delayed facility. Hashtag Lamu Port roars. And finally, the bigger picture, even the local people from Central are crying and risking their lives to attract the president's attention. Then there's a Swahili phrase, and then hashtag Lamu Port roars. So a lot of people clearly are excited by the opening of the port of Lamu in Kenya. A lot, I'm sure, now looking forward to what Ethiopia will do and what South Sudan will do, and how the whole LAPSET project will come to life. And the fact that it's going to link up to Dakar in West Africa, you can imagine how connected the continent is eventually going to become. So this is something I'd encourage everyone to be looking out for, because we never thought that we could connect the continent by sea or by port. Now, this really says that it has already happened. It started in conjunction with a lot of developments of the African railway that has already started. In the next 5-10 years, Africa is going to be a very, very interesting continent to be on. So let's see what we can all do to contribute to the hashtag Africa we want, as we say. So this ends the segment on Aeon East Africa. Always very happy to be bringing these two segments, APR March and Aeon East Africa. And we'll now jump into the discussion proper. But before that, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back from the break, and welcome once again, Mahmoud Kamara.
Thank you.
The manager of the Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund. Now, for those who were not able to catch August 2020's episode of the first interview, it'd be good to also remind audiences what the African Transitional Justice Legacy Fund is, what you do there, and then, of course, there have been some new developments since then. So then we can start off with that, then you can segue that into the conversation on transitional justice.
Okay.
What is it? What's the state of transitional justice on the continent in 2021?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ikebensa, and thank you for hosting me.
You're welcome.
So my name is Mahmoud Kamara, and I'm the director of the Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund. The Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund is an African-based grant-making organization. Mm-hmm. We support community-based organizations, non-governmental organizations, and survivor groups in West African countries. Mm-hmm. We support transitional justice efforts in Africa, beginning in 7 West African countries. Okay. And what we do is provide both technical and financial assistance to these groups to enable them to support governments to advance transitional justice initiatives. Okay,
but not in Ghana. You don't support Ghana?
We currently don't support any initiative in Ghana because Ghana is not a post-conflict country. Yeah. And we, based on a study that we conducted prior to the establishment of the fund, we focused on starting with 7 West African countries. Sierra Leone, which is a post-conflict country. Liberia, another post-conflict country. The only difference we have among these countries is the Gambia, which is not a post-conflict country, but a post-dictatorship country. Because we want to see how we can support the current Gambian government and the Gambian people to deal with the legacies of the past of Jammeh's dictatorship period. You know, Jammeh ruled Gambia for 22 years. Yes. We also support organizations and groups in Mali. And groups in northern Nigeria, northeastern Nigeria, that are dealing with the effect of Boko Haram's, the violence of the Boko Haram conflict. And Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, we support groups there and organizations dealing with the post-elections violence that happened after the transition that took place from Laurent Gbagbo to President Ouattara. Yeah. And so these are the countries we work, and of course in Guinea. These are the 7 countries we work. We also have a very strong partnership with the African Union Commission and through the Department of Political Affairs. So we provide this support to ensure that community-based groups, survivor groups, and groups that are based in the continent, that are based at the grassroots, undertake pioneering transitional justice initiatives to advance new ideas in transitional justice intervention.
How did these groups that you are working with, how did they take the COVID-19 pandemic, given what they are doing and given how silencing the guns was a theme of 2020? And you can imagine that they must have felt that, well, finally, wow, there's a groundswell. There's this is the year in which we can, a lot of the things that we're discussing can, can come to light, and yet now we have a pandemic. I'm sure, apart from you and your staff, feeling frustrated that there's a pandemic, I'm sure you also at sixes and sevens whether now you should begin paying attention to health or some other aspects that would help facilitate the work. What was the situation like at that time?
So, like everybody else, the outbreak of COVID affected interventions significantly, but particularly transitional justice interventions.
Okay.
Because when global pandemic like the coronavirus outbreak emerged, and governments shift their focus. Everybody shifts their attention to dealing with the pandemic. And that creates other avenues of conflicts. It creates avenues of tension that will reverse whatever gain you might have made in previous interventions. So our, and because a lot of the organizations that we support are small organizations and small groups, the impact was huge. And a lot of organizations had to stop work, people had to stay home, of course, because of the measures that were put in place by states to ensure that they minimize the spread and bring down the curve. Everybody was talking about dealing with the curve, the COVID number of cases. What we did as a fund was to reach out to all our grantees, our grantee partners, and ask them about how they can repurpose some elements of the money that we have given them.
Okay.
We had a conversation, and many of them used the opportunity, used the outbreak as an opportunity to also innovate.
Okay.
So we had organizations who were working with tech companies, and these tech companies were also co-opted by the government to undertake tracking and tracing measures. And we also have organizations that we're working with that already had community structures.
Okay.
And these community structures were used for contact tracing, were used for public health education, and were used for a number of initiatives to help in addressing conflicts, because there were a lot of conflicts for resources. COVID had its own plus and minuses. There were situations where the minimal resources that were available in communities became a source of conflicts for those communities as a result of COVID. And with the existence of these community structures, these community groups, you had agents, we had community mobilizers who were able to intervene immediately. And again, so this is the interesting thing with transitional justice and the advancement of the concept, where you're no longer dealing with wrongs of the past, you're also helping to prevent a recurrence of mass atrocities or conflicts situation, and building an enabling environment for communities to live peacefully, prosperously, and in a united way.
Is that is that what they call future casting or something? Or is that some?
It could be described as such. It could also be a conflict prevention mechanism. And one of the things that scholars of transitional justice are looking at now is where you incorporate everyday and normal peace-building initiatives and conflict prevention mechanisms into transitional justice intervention, so that you don't just look at what has been damaged. You look at putting in place things that will prevent your existing structures from being damaged or from being destroyed, and that will lead to a recurrence of the violence that we're already doing in the first place. So we're supporting organizations, and during COVID, these organizations were able to adapt. So for example, in some countries where organizations had planned to organize community meetings to popularize the Africa Union Transitional Justice Policy Framework, what they did was to use the radio. So instead of bringing people in one room, or in a hotel, or in a workshop, or in a town hall, these people more people were even able to benefit from the engagement because they used the community radio.
Okay.
So there was an extensive use of media in advancing transitional justice messaging, in changing the narrative around transitional justice. And as we speak, we've supported the Media Reform Coordinating Group in Sierra Leone to develop a manual on transitional justice, so journalists can use the right languages and the discourse and the right diction to help in changing narrative around transitional justice in the country. We're also supporting organizations in the Gambia to develop an online memorial so that people can collect stories of their experiences under the Jammeh regime and memorialize it online so that it's there for posterity.
Okay.
And so the use of media was one way that we were able to support institutions to adapt. The use of technology was another way. And the use of our community structures, community mobilization structures was also another way that our grantee partners were able to take advantage of what was a very damaging situation and transform it into an opportunity.
It may seem obvious as you look back on it now, but do you think that your partners and yourself may have focused so much on media if COVID-19 pandemic had not happened? Because you may have gone into a hotel, brought people together in a hotel and felt that that would be the optimal way of getting, but because that was physically impossible because of the protocols.
Well, one of the things about the ATJLF is that we're trying to broaden the horizon and broaden the scope of transitional justice intervention so that we don't repeat what is the conventionally known interventions on transitional justice, whether it's going to the ICC or going to the courts. We are ensuring that we broaden the intervention scope. So media has always been one of our intervening platforms and channels. So the support that we are providing to media institutions, not just in Sierra Leone, but in Liberia, in the Gambia, in Nigeria, in all our country, in fact, we've made a strategic choice in supporting at least one media initiative that will work with the other grantee partners to not just ensure that they amplify the interventions, they amplify knowledge about the interventions, but to help in changing the narrative. The media is the best platform you can use to increase knowledge, but also to enable people to change the discourse around a particular theme. So yes, it helped. COVID contributed in the amount of media time and media channels and platforms that we used, but it didn't push us to using media. We already
were going to use media.
We were going to use the media.
Let's step back a bit and then try to also reflect a bit on what transitional justice is. Trying to define it, because there's I can see that there are elements of academia in it, the elements of civil society, there's a practical bit as well. How do all those three come together in a way that people can understand it?
Yes. So it is, so transitional justice, these are the mechanisms that governments, states undertake to deal with the wrongs of the past, to deal with the legacies of conflict or mass atrocities or mass crimes or serious human rights violations.
Okay, so it's always usually looking back at the past.
It is always,
how to correct.
Exactly. It is about dealing with things that have been damaged. It's about repairing. That's why you have one element of transitional justice is about reparation. Reparation is to repair things that are damaged. And so you have the various pillars, and just to go into the various themes or thematic pillars of transitional justice. So truth and reconciliation, this is one pillar of transitional justice. So where people come and narrate the truth about what has happened or what led to them taking certain things, certain action. So for instance, when apartheid ended in South Africa, people needed to know what happened. People needed to come to terms with the truth, to be able to reconcile with each other and to reconcile with the states. Because the state was the principal perpetrator of the atrocities. The same thing in Sierra Leone. And when the war ended in Sierra Leone, with support from the United Nations, the government of Sierra Leone established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It had a mandate to collect testimonies from not just the victims, but perpetrators.
Okay.
And then at the end of that process, they make recommendations.
Okay.
So that is one element. And then you have the other element around accountability, justice and accountability. Because it's one thing, they always say, there's a cliche, or there's a common saying, that there's no peace without justice.
Yeah.
So if you want people to live peacefully, there has to be some elements of justice. Now, what justice means is something that is subjective to different people. Right? It has different interpretation. In some countries and in some localities, justice is localized. In some other places, it is internationalized.
Yeah.
And some people want to go to court and go through a trial. Some people just want apology.
Yeah.
They just want acknowledgements from the perpetrators that I did this wrong to you and I'm sorry. So that is the elements of transitional justice. And then you also have reparation. Reparation is where this has a lot of other sub-elements, like restitution, compensation, satisfaction, and all of these sub-elements. But this is more, in its entirety, overall, it's about helping people to repair, helping societies to repair, helping states to repair. And the repairing can take different forms. And most of the time when people talk about reparation, the first thing that comes to their mind is financial compensation to victims.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that we are doing as a fund, which is complementary to the African Union's transitional justice policy, is to diversify the definition and understanding of reparation. So that you have elements of socioeconomic benefits, but also have psychosocial benefits for people, because conflicts, mass atrocities, serious human rights violations leave a stain, and some of those things can be traumatic, psychosocial. So how you deal with the psychosocial harm that has been caused by people's experiences of war, conflict, or dictatorship. And then you have institutional reforms. So this is where you help to build institutions, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the law enforcement institutions, whether it's governance infrastructure. I heard earlier you were talking about the Africa Peer Review mechanism. These are all mechanisms that have been put up by the intergovernmental agency, the AU, to ensure that states hold each other accountable. And institutional reforms are to help transfer authority from individuals to institutions to ensure that institutions play the role that they ought to play, and the state does not depend on individual whims and caprices to advance government policies. It has to be the institution. I think it was Obama that says Africa does not need strong men, we need strong institutions. And so that you have that elements within transitional justice. These are things that have been all, before Obama said it, transitional justice experts have been saying it in different platforms and different spaces. But again, this is the language that is being used, the diction and the platforms make will make the acceptance or understanding of it different. And so that is where transitional justice is all encompassing, because you need every player, every sector to ensure that these elements are advanced. You need the media, you need academia, you need civil society, and you need the policymakers and the lawmakers to ensure that transitional justice objectives and aspirations are achieved and are promoted. So in our support to civil society organizations and survivor groups, we try to amplify the voices that are often left behind. So I will give an example. In the case of Mali, we're supporting an organization called AVFRRN in Mali, which is a collective of internally displaced women who are based in a camp in Bamako. These are women who have been made to flee their homes from Timbuktu, from Gao and Mopti and other places, and they're all settled now as internally displaced persons in Bamako. And the Malian government is also going through its own, what they call a CVGR, its own truth and justice process, their own truth and reconciliation process. And they are collecting testimonies from victims, they are collecting recommendations from civil society. But there's a gap in terms of the people who are coming forward. There's a gap in terms of the kind of issues that they are collecting. So our role was to support them to ensure that it is all inclusive, but also they capture the reality, they live the experiences of people who have suffered from the conflict in the north of Mali.
Okay, since 2012. This is the 2012 coup, right?
Exactly, since the 2012 coup and all the conflict that has been going on. So the government introduced this commission to look back at all what has been happening since independence.
Yeah.
So the mandate of that commission is really wide.
Wow.
And they are developing a reparation framework. But how can they develop a framework that doesn't have the voice and the experiences of people who it is meant for? So we are supporting these groups. We are supporting other civil society groups to ensure that there's a collective voice, there is a unified advocacy agenda for what the Malian reparation framework should be. We're also doing a similar kind of support to organizations in the Gambia. Okay. And helping the civil society in Gambia to ensure that they increase the number and quality of testimonies that the TRRC, which is the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission of the Gambia, collects. Okay. You know, the commission is wrapping up its work, and they will be hopefully submitting their reports, the final reports, in mid-June. And we've been supporting civil society organizations that partner with the commission to ensure that the reach of the commission is expanded. It goes to communities that the commission will not ordinarily go to because of capacity or perception issues. And in countries like Liberia, where we're working with organizations like Search for Common Ground, the GJRP, which is a group that is promoting or advocating for the establishment of a special court for Liberia, because, you know, Liberia had its own TRC, but they didn't have a special court. Okay. So we're supporting, unlike Sierra Leone, we're supporting them to continue that advocacy, so that, going back to my earlier point, there is, yes, reconciliation, but there's also accountability. Okay. That is based on people's understanding of what justice means to them.
In an age in which we talk a lot about sustainable development goals, transitional justice has a very SDG 16, thing around it. Justice, which is peaceful, just and inclusive societies. Exactly. Of course, this is an Agenda 2063 show where we're trying to get people to also reflect and remember that Agenda 2063 is as equally important as the SDGs. Help us understand how this connects, the transitional justice connects to the Agenda 2063 conversation and some of the real efforts the AU made, because I understand, when I recall what you said last time, that this was probably one of the most comprehensive consultations that the African Union has undertaken. Yes. And not everybody knows this, sadly. Yes. Sometimes it's important to highlight those things so people know the AU does work behind the scenes. Absolutely. So the African Union's Constitutional Justice Policy, the AUTJP, is the document you are referring to. This is the continental framework that the AU, in collaboration with civil society organization, developed, and it was unanimously adopted by AU member states at the AU Assembly in February 2019. Okay. So the policy is very comprehensive, like I said the last time, and it is comprehensive because of the nature of the consultation. Yeah. So the civil society and the AU teams work for almost a decade in collecting ideas, validating ideas, because the continent wanted to produce a document on transitional justice that speaks to the reality of the context, the continental context. That it's also, that it contains what the continent wants to see. We say the Africa we want to see. So the Africa we want to see when it comes to transitional justice is encapsulated in the AUTJP. Yeah. And that is why the Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund is supporting the popularization of the AUTJP. Because we know that the ideas and the content of that document are not alien. The provisions and the recommendations of the framework were developed by Africans, scrutinized by Africans,
adopted by Africans for Africans.
Wow.
So our role is to ensure that Africans who were not involved in that process know how they can use. It's a soft law document. It is not a legally binding document.
Okay.
And this is because when something is good, you don't need to foist it on people.
Yes,
You don't need to compel people to adopt, to accept something that is good for them.
Yeah.
And that is the approach that the AUTJP is taking, and that is the approach the AU, through its civil society partners, have adopted to ensure that member states adopt a policy that they participated in developing,
yes,
that they can align with, that speaks to the reality of their context. And this, when I mean context, I mean their political and socio-cultural context. And luckily, we have, since the AU has been adopted and the AUTJP has been adopted, we have a number of countries that are already adapting their own national TJ policies, drawing from the AUTJP. And this was the intention of the AUTJP, to ensure that member states develop this, localize the framework and contextualize it. So we have the Gambia that is developing a TJ strategy and framework. Uganda has developed its own. Mali is actually drawing, even before the document was completed, Mali was already putting, and which is why we're supporting institutions there, organizations there. In Sierra Leone, we're supporting civil society organizations to work with the government of Sierra Leone to develop a national TJ guide that will work with existing infrastructure like the Peace Commission that the Sierra Leone government is setting up, which has gone through Parliament already. And the same for Cote d'Ivoire and other countries. So this is, and it supports the AU agenda of a peaceful, prosperous and united continent.
Yes.
Because that is also the objective and aspiration of transitional justice, to ensure that countries deal with their past and promote a peaceful, prosperous and united nation, a united society. And in the process ensuring that victims and survivors of the wrongs of the past, of the conflicts, of whatever atrocity that might have been committed are part of that process. And the AUTJP has a whole chapter on diversity management to ensure that various voices, various elements and various demographics are heard and are also seen to be part of a process that affects everybody in the society.
It's a lot of impressive work that ACJLF is doing with all these institutions, so well done.
Thank you.
And I already see that I'm quite impressed hearing what is happening with Mali, especially with what Mali is going through, and yet making the time to, have this long drawn. So that's great news. I'm also thinking now about institutions, because ECOWAS Court, for example, is one. Another unsung hero of the ECOWAS institutions, because there's a lot of cases that go there without passing through national courts, and often ECOWAS will sometimes, the court will award, the plaintiff, against the litigants.
States,
and so on.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of things that are happening with the ECOWAS court. We don't always hear of it. You have to find it when you look for it.
Yes.
Are you doing any work with the ECOWAS court? Because it seems to me that ECOWAS court, from a lot of the advocacy that I've seen, is one major institution that a lot of West Africans are realizing they can go to when they have problems, and the national courts are not listening to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the ECOWAS court has actually been serving its purpose as the people's court.
Yes.
It has been used by strategic litigation experts and lawyers to peacefully challenge and lawfully challenge excesses of the states or individuals or other institutions. There are a number of cases where they have made progressive rulings that are beneficial and that are useful for the advancement of human rights and social justice in the sub-region. And it is one of those institutions that we really need to uphold and protect, so that its independence that it currently enjoys continues, and So yes, so that's something that we currently don't have any partnership with the courts per se. We have partnership and we support institutions that engage the courts.
Oh, okay.
So our work, again, like I said, as a fund, is to increase the capacity of civil society and survivor groups to be able to utilize these institutions and advocate and demand for their rights.
Okay.
And to also ensure that there's an enabling environment in which these institutions can function independently. There's an enabling environment in which the states can adhere to the orders or the rulings that these institutions issue. And there's an environment where civil society can feel comfortable, capacitated, and trusting enough to engage these institutions in the first place.
Okay, fantastic. So now that you've gained a lot of traction with the work that you do, I think you've been around for about 3 years now.
Yes, just under 3 years.
In Accra. You're going to be sticking, I guess, to West Africa for a while before you decide to go
into other parts of the continent. So because we already partner with the Africa Union Commission through the Department of Political Affairs, we're also thinking of expanding our partnership with the ECOSOC, the AU ECOSOC Secretariat, and other AU organs. We definitely have a continental aspiration. We've always had a continental aspiration, but we wanted to start from West Africa for a number of reasons. One of them being that West Africa has been a theater for transitional justice. There's a lot of knowledge that is incubated here that we could transmit to other parts of not just the continent, but the world. And we are hoping that as the fund continues to grow, we have over 40 different grants partners at the moment in West Africa alone. But as the fund continues to grow, we will continue to expand to other countries strategically. And through our partnership with the AU, we're already supporting other countries outside West Africa.
Fantastic. Okay, so in your parting words, what would you say to those who have just come to the program and are just finding out about transitional justice? How can they contribute to the, let's say, the narrative of transitional justice without necessarily being a lawyer or an activist? How? What would be your recommendation?
So, transitional justice practice has been going on in Africa for more than 30 years now, since the 90s. When it started in South Africa with the TRC, all the way to Sierra Leone, and now we have the Gambia, that is probably the newest kid in the block when it comes to transitional justice intervention and practice. And then over that period, we've had for the first time, the AU developing a continental framework that deals with these issues that have been emerging in various countries. We have emerging countries like South Sudan that will be dealing with their own transitional justice issues, and the AU is going to be supporting the government of the South Sudan to develop its own transitional justice interventions and mechanisms, drawing from the AUTJP, so the framework from the AUTJP. So what my message will be is that for us at the Africa Transitional Justice Legacy Fund, our work and focus to support civil society organizations and survivor groups to help in reactivating the agency of survivors and victims of conflict and dictatorship will continue, and we will want all the players, different players within the continent, to see these efforts as things that they can support, whether it is through partnerships, whether it is through knowledge development and knowledge management, because we want to be knowledge brokers of transitional justice in the continent. And one way we will do that is having this kind of conversation so that people know about instruments like the AUTJP that can be used. You can get these documents from the AU website and just read through it, and also engage with the various organizations that are working on transitional justice issues in the continent. And our fund is there to support those organizations. And like I said, we are supporting more than 40 at the moment with small grants in different countries in West Africa, with the hope of expanding to other countries in the continent. And we will continue to do that. The fund is here to stay. Okay. And we're here to continue supporting various initiatives that are innovative, that are transformative, and that will advance the voice and agency of survivors and victims in transitional justice intervention in the continent.
All right. Mahmoud Kamara, thank you so very much for taking out of your busy schedule to speak with us for a second time.
Thank you.
I'm sure that the next time that we bring you on board,
there'll be
something
new to say as well.
By all means. Yeah. So thank you once again. And we'll definitely be re-engaging you to find out what ways in which we can also help expand and amplify the conversation.
Yes.
But ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to speak with us, to listen to us on the very important conversation on transitional justice, which is a very key component of peace and security, silencing the guns and so on. And silencing the guns is not over. There's still a lot of things still to be said. And in an area where there's a lot of conversation about the African Continental Free Trade Area, peace and security is still always at the back of our mind. We can't take away from that. And I think we must say that when it comes to peace and security, I think Africans have probably now become, world-class experts on managing peace and security. That's without a doubt. So let's build on that, on those strengths that Africans have. What is it they call the Ubuntu and all these things? Let's build on those things so that, we will be known for something. Africa is already known for something, as we saw Africa Day, and peace and security definitely is one of them, as we have heard in Mahmoud Kamara's interview today. So thank you once again. Hope you can drop your comments and so on the scrolling trawler, and we hope to be able to speak with you next time. You can find all the other episodes on tv.aau.org. Find Association of African Universities TV on Facebook and on YouTube as well. Thanks once again to the great work of the production team, and we hope to see you next time for another exciting edition. My name is A.K. Benson Jr., regular host for this show. We'll talk to you next time. Have a great day. Goodbye.